So I'm not really quite sure. One of us is going to be host and one of us is going to be the guest. I forgot. Fill me in that, will you, Susan? Who's going to be? What are we doing here? What exactly is going on in the studio this afternoon?
You're going to be the host because I'm the host on another show. So you're going to be host today. You get to ask me questions and I get to answer them.
Okay, good. Welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. With us today we have Susan Shaner, who does a show with John Gogliettino, a very nice show on Comcast. And Susan's going to talk about something other than that show. She's going to talk about what she does in her own personal life. I'll let you introduce yourself and tell me or the audience or whoever happens to be around listening what it is you do, and then we'll talk about that.
You mean my real day job outside of the
Your real
forum.
job.
Right. Well, I have my own business called Sage Leadership Strategies, LLC. It's a consulting practice. I consult with organizations and individuals and help them achieve their goals. Consulting is a very ubiquitous term. I mean, what exactly is consulting? I mean, other than the fact you people consult with you. Yeah.
What is it? Where did this term actually come? Where do consultants come from?
That's a good.
Out of the consultant
$1,000,000 question.
Out of the consultant patch, maybe.
From a whole range of places, but consulting basically is where you're giving someone advice, or in my case, it's advice or coaching. I also offer executive coaching and career counseling services. It may be either an individual or corporation that hires me. I mean, the bulk of my business is typically Fortune 500 companies, typically Fortune 100 companies.
So the creme de la creme, at least financially speaking.
I guess you could
maybe
say
not in terms of skill levels, because obviously they need your assistance to spruce up, to spiff up what they're doing. They need your advice. So you're the creme de la creme.
Well, yeah. I mean, I consult. I typically focus on leadership and executive development and high potential talent. So in that sense, that kind of is my target audience. I don't like to use the word creme de la creme because it sounds very elitist.
And we don't like the word elitist anymore.
I don't like that terminology.
No, that's become a very, very roughly treated word in our lexicon.
Yeah, and I'm all about helping people show up as their best selves and helping people realize their potential. So that's the core part of my business. But what I also do is I have a very eclectic background, and I'm also a certified Nam yoga instructor and a harmonium practitioner, so I also do a little bit on the side, if you will, on energy work and healing.
That's right. You mentioned that when we first met at the breakfast.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll talk about yoga and Reiki.
So I could go wherever you want to go.
We'll go into yoga and maybe even Reiki, which I guess is
Reiki,
energy healing.
Yes.
Because we had a lot of people on over the last year because of the big healthcare thing.
Yes.
We had a lot of people, a lot of non-traditional practitioners on talking about how Eastern medicine, Western medicine, how they could integrate, how they could complement one another. But that's enough of that later. Later for that. Let's go back to the
consulting.
Consulting, okay.
So your original question was, what does the term consulting mean and where do consultants come from? And I've been in my business 4 years, and before I started my last position at a company, because I've worked for a bunch of different corporations, was at IBM. And I was part of a group that was targeted to the top 300 leaders, and there we were a cadre of internal consultants, about 30 consultants, and we came from a wide range of backgrounds. I mean, we had folks in our group who were PhD IO psychologists, people who had their MBAs, very different kinds of backgrounds, but basically we all had a niche or expertise in either business, strategy, leadership, helping people change behavior. Because of my background, I mean, I was originally, way back when in the dark ages, originally trained as an expressive arts therapist using the creative arts, and then found myself in the field of training and development. So everything I've done that's led me to working for companies like GE and IBM was all about development, helping people, again, realize their potential and make changes in their life, personal, professional lives. In this case, it's targeted for what companies want to achieve.
So what you had was a group of people, all of which obviously none of them were Yogi Berra, because if you remember Yogi Berra, the baseball player, the question that was always put to him was, how are you such a good hitter? And Yogi would try to fumble through an explanation of hitting, and finally he would say, let me just show you how I do it. And he would just do it. But you actually have to be on the outside looking in and look at the skills and look at the behaviors and coach people how to.
Well, yeah, if you want to take Yogi Berra a step further, Yogi Berra also said, if you don't know where you're going, you're going to end up somewhere else. So
Yogi was some yogi, wasn't he?
He was a wise yogi.
Oh, my God.
So in terms of development, yeah, I mean, it's a combination of, sometimes people need to see the model, so somebody like Yogi Berra showing them how to do it.
Yeah.
In other instances, people not only need to see it, they need to feel it, try it, and get feedback on it. So, it may be, somebody can read a book and kind of get it. That's probably the minority of people. And that's what our educational system's geared towards.
Yeah.
But in a lot of cases, what's most effective, I mean, there's been tons of research done on this, is that most people grow and develop through challenging situations, either in life or work. So some people, you can sit, in a seminar or a workshop and get knowledge and information, but the greatest way that you're going to develop and stretch to another level of capability is by meeting significant life challenges.
What they call hands-on.
Yeah, in life or work, yeah.
Okay.
Stretching.
Okay, so whereas a child might read a book about the Civil War and get it, probably most kids would probably do better to be taken on a field trip to a location where they can actually get a sense of what it's like and what to expect and what happened.
Yeah, because
almost not exactly firsthand experience, but to smell it, feel it,
Well, let's face it, if you take your example of the Civil War, I mean, it's incredibly, I know for myself, I mean, I happen to be sensitive to these things, but when I went to Gettysburg, whoa. I mean, that was a very different experience than reading about the Battle of Gettysburg.
Yeah.
I mean, you just go in the vast fields. So, yes, I mean, our educational system, although that's changed and is continuing to change, but traditionally has been geared towards listening, auditory learning, and reading, visual. But there's, kinesthetic, there's all different kinds of learning and intelligences. And so when you're dealing with developing adults, you want to make sure, as with kids too, you're tapping into the different learning modalities. But with adults, what's different is they have a body and a range of experiences that they can tap into and connect with. So you always want to be involving, engaging, and helping them make connections with any previous knowledge and experience.
Now, we've all seen shows about offices and what goes on in offices and the interactions.
The Office, I love that show.
Yeah, well, there you go.
That's right.
But we all know that, I guess we all kind of sense that the office is kind of a microcosm of the world in the sense that that there are politics that occur.
Yep.
What happens when you're advising a group of people and coaching them on how to do better in whatever they do and how to perform better in that group, which I'm reading as being kind of some part of what you do?
It's part of what I do. Yeah, I mean, for example, I might be working with, a senior leader at a company who runs, multi-million or billion-dollar business.
Yeah.
And, it may, in some cases it may be working with them on how to develop their direct reports to be more of leaders versus just managers or doers. In other cases, it may be helping them navigate the organizational politics. So it may be working with them on their influence strategies and reading the cues and the signs and how to leverage and navigate their work relationships. Again, with the focus always being on two areas. One is, what's the overall business context and goal, their goals and strategies.
Goal-driven, yeah.
And the second is, in particular, what do they need to work on by way of, knowledge, skills, abilities, behaviors. Many cases, when we're talking about leadership, it's about behaviors.
Okay. You're in a group. You're doing this with a group.
Yeah.
And you find that somehow or other world politics, let's say, have entered into the dynamics of a group.
Yep.
And they talk about these things, and obviously they have points of agreement and points of disagreement. They relate that to what they do on the job, but they also talk about what's going on in the world. How is that okay, first of all? Is that okay to talk about things outside the office, in the office? How would you advise them? You have a group of people, and some of them are, some of them obviously want to be apolitical, and they just want to, just goal-driven for the company. And some of them want to apply what's going on in world politics and relate to that.
Yeah, well, I would take your question in a couple different directions.
Okay.
The first would be if it's in the context of, let's just say, a business planning meeting, in terms of politics or global economies, I think it could be relevant depending upon, like, if you're in a strategy setting session, for example, with the senior leadership team, if they're talking about, what markets they should go into, should they expand into China, there could be, it could be on point, not off point.
Okay, it could be very relevant, very
yeah, exactly. Yeah. To talk about what's the socioeconomic, political terrain that we have to navigate. So it could be on point. On the other hand, which is sort of delicate sometimes in the corporate arena, is if there's anything that people would think could be creating any sort of exclusionary or hostile work environment. So if it was something that was getting into, let's say, people's religious practices or something like that, that could be a little dicey and is not necessarily related to the topic at hand, because it sounds like you're talking about two different things, kind of discerning, sifting out what's related to the business of the business and what's related to, just killing time while you're waiting for the meeting to start and building relationships. And so that piece is, maybe where it needs to be more sensitivity.
So
does that make sense?
It does, and I'm trying to think of a good question maybe to follow up to that with. Okay, you're talking to a group for a company, and they're thinking global marketplace. Yep. And within that group, there's some people obviously that believe that that globalization is relevant and a good thing, and some people think that maybe the focus should be on doing what's best. Let's say keeping jobs in America versus globalization. Yeah. What? Pick up on that and tell me something about that, because I have no idea what I'm asking you right now.
Okay, like what my point of view would be on that, or what I might advise somebody.
Yeah.
So I think that it would not serve us very well to, as a country, to say that globalization isn't a good thing, or we don't want to participate in globalization, because the reality is that globalization is here. It's not a question of whether we want to participate or buy into it. Yeah. It's a question of how we go about that, because if we don't, it's already here. I mean, we're more interdependent than ever before. I mean, you can see just what happened in the last 2 years with the United States. Yeah. With
the economic markets,
Yeah, I mean, the crisis in our country. Yeah. And I think people are seeing now that the rest of the world is dependent on our economy. And so, to some extent, there's a vested interest in the United States doing okay, or at least our economy not collapsing.
A huge amount of interdependency between countries and...
Totally. We're getting some messages here.
We're getting messages flying into the studio, and this message is 2 letters long. BP. Let's talk about BP. It's relevant. It's relevant. How does that? Okay.
Well, that's a great one that intersects economics, socio-political, and environmental.
So I'm the head of BP, and I've got a room full of people, and we want your
hopefully upset people.
We want your advice on what should we do.
Well,
advise me.
Okay. Well, I mean, first of all, no brainer. The first thing they have to do is navigate the PR, but it's I mean, I've got a bunch of different hats and perspectives there, but if I was advising them, yes, the PR, and the reality is there's so much PR can do in this situation.
Yeah, they've got a serious problem on their hands.
But working the crisis management of it and making sure that they have solid strategies and communication plans for their multiple constituents. So not only their stockholders, because obviously their stock's in the tank.
Got to take care of them a little bit,
but also managing the crisis in terms of the different constituents, stakeholders who want to get in there and manage the environmental crisis. And then, of course, they've got the different government interests. So it's a very complicated situation. I mean, obviously, in terms of resolving all of the damage, unfortunately, that we won't fully ever know, but we're certainly not going to know for many, many years.
Not for generations, maybe, yeah.
So in terms of the business of BP, I mean, I think, because ultimately at the end of the day, and I consider myself a social entrepreneur, I always have, you know, the social interest in mind.
Socially conscious?
Yeah, socially conscious, yeah. That's probably a more accurate term, but, you know, at the end of the day, businesses are about the bottom line and making money.
Yeah.
And so BP's, if you look at that from that perspective, their interest is going to be about, okay, how much is this damage going to cost us in terms of money out of our pocket to clean it up, but then also clearly in terms of the PR on the whole thing.
Well, we've had Ben Roberts.
Not to oversimplify it.
We've had Ben Roberts on the show, who does actually admit socially conscious investing.
Oh, I know Ben.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And he's been on the show a couple times, and we've talked about how does he gauge a company in terms of the company's performance, not only in terms of you want to make some money on your investment, obviously, but you also want to invest in a company that's doing whatever you judge to be the right thing.
Yeah.
To be socially conscious in terms of the environment, not wasteful in terms of materials, reasonable with reasonable labor relations with your employee, taking care of your employees. You want to keep them in the company. You want them to be like Ford, like Henry Ford used to say. We want our employees to be able to buy a Ford.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, I'm not going to mention any names here, but there are certain companies that I personally have boycotted from purchasing some of their products because of how they treat their employees.
Velocity company, Walmart.
I did not say that.
Thank you. That's me that said that.
I didn't say that.
I said it, Walmart, because we've had a lot of shows about what multinational corporations and what the benefit of dealing with local companies, small businesses, and even if it costs you a little tiny bit extra. You don't want to go to. I'll name a couple more companies. You don't want to go to Starbucks. You don't want to go to Dunkin' Donuts. You want to go to Coors, because Coors Coffee Shop, because
or Molten Java or something.
Yeah,
that's local.
another great example. Molten Java, because they take their money that they earn and they reinvest it locally.
Yeah, and their local shop.
Yeah,
so you're supporting the local guys.
Absolutely, and as I say, the money gets reinvested locally, and it goes in this big circle, and the circle might be tight, it might be real big, but the money always comes back to you because your business, you take your money and you invest it locally, invest, and eventually it comes back to you. So the money circulates a little bit slower, but it circulates locally, as opposed to going somewhere else.
You know, I'm all for that as much as possible. I mean, for example, I happen to be a big gardener. I have my own herb and vegetable gardens.
Excellent.
But just because of time and space, well, actually I do have the space, but in my yard, but the time. We also have a CSA, so we're supporting the local farmers, and also I'm a bit of a health, I don't want to say nut, enthusiast.
There's nothing crazy about wanting healthy.
So I eat all organic, and I also feel good about the fact that I'm supporting a local farmer, and just from the standpoint of the food I'm actually putting into my body, it's like picked and I get it that day.
Yeah, and it's obviously much more nutritious.
Yeah.
So it's not just calorie intake; it's the nutritional benefit of the food.
The highly dense nutrients. So whenever I can, I prefer to support local businesses and entrepreneurs, because obviously I'm an entrepreneur and I know what all that's about.
Exactly.
And you're an entrepreneur too, so you know.
You're
what
a local
about.
business. I'm a local business, and because of that, we want to think consciously about supporting other local businesses?
Well, the reality is that most of the labor force, even though I've worked for every kind of area. I mean, I started my career working for small companies, and went to medium size, and then very large, multinational, hundreds of thousands of employee companies, and then started up my own.
Yeah.
So, but however, when you work in a corporate for a corporation, sometimes people think that that's the bulk of the American workforce, but really most of the workforce is small, medium-sized businesses, and that's how about 70% the engine of this country is entrepreneurship.
70% of jobs are created by small businesses.
Yep.
And whatever's left, 30% or whatever portion of that is large business, and it's what, as you say, it's what drives America.
Yeah. So I'm all for supporting that entrepreneurial spirit wherever I can, but with an eye towards the social implications.
How do you help a large company behave more like a small company? Do they think in terms of, we're big, but we're global, but we want to be local too, and we want to be cognizant of the local communities that we have shops in?
Well, yeah. I mean, two things are big driving forces, I say these days, in the last 5 to 10 years, and particularly the last couple of years. Obviously, social media and technology is totally changing the game in terms of you can have corporations, the smart ones anyway, are now becoming aware.
The ones that have had you assisting them.
No, but are now becoming aware of that sometimes they need to be concerned about a small or medium-sized player, because there's a lot more leverage and a lot more things can happen with smaller players, the way they're leveraging technology. And some of it's due to social media, but just other kinds of things. I mean, you can see that somebody could piece together a deliverable or product from hiring somebody in India, in China. If you look at all the pieces in the chain that it takes to create a product. So companies are savvy to that piece. The other piece is that more and more they are relying on local talent because they understand that their customers in those regions, from a bunch of different standpoints, they want to make sure that they really understand the context and the cultural and business environment. So cultural understanding, and I don't even want to use the word diversity because there's other connotations, but understanding the cultural business context you're operating in is really, really important. So I'd say, large global companies more and more. It used to be that they would they would consider themselves global companies, but they would basically be an American company with a lot of kind of offices, and then take American talent, employees, and just transport them around the world. Now, wherever possible, they're trying to identify and work with local talent in that country.
So they'll have an interpreter, so to speak, because you look at even in a country like the United States, you've got so many different brands of English, if you will. I mean, parts of in Ohio they call soda, they call it pop. You have all kinds of dialectical differences in a country this large, and even in smaller countries probably you have huge dialectical differences. So to have somebody local to act as a go-between for the company and to not just sell the company to the local people, but sell the local people to the company and let the company know what they need to do in order to best serve, to provide whatever service or product in a way that'll work best for the people that they're selling it to.
Yeah, I can tell you, for example, one of the things I get involved in is, I help companies with development programs that are targeted to developing their leaders. And this spring, with a colleague, we wrote a simulation, which was really a business case study. It was for a global company. And it really had a couple of objectives. One was to teach their leaders and how to think more strategically and how to use their approach to thinking through strategy. But also, with what they were finding is that people were not always as culturally adept and sensitive. So, and we picked all the hot topics. We did it on the global healthcare environment, in the Middle East, And it was situated in Saudi Arabia, and then they had to deal with a customer
So
situation.
there were a lot of very
hot charged topics.
Hot charged topics and dynamics going on there, I'm sure.
Totally. And so it was an opportunity to give the leaders a chance, the business leaders a chance to really grapple with a complexity of issue and then how they would solve the customer's concerns and dilemma in a way that was sensitive to the culture they were operating in. Like, we just happened to pick Saudi Arabia as an example, but that's very different than United States culture.
Oh, yes.
So they had to not only, and there were different, tools and resources, but they had to understand, like, for example, even though I'm an American, and I went through their assessment, so it told me what I already know, that I'm not a typical American, meaning your stereotypical American.
Right.
That I have values that sort of show up. My cultural profile is a little bit different. So I get a profile, so I understand kind of what my values are and how I operate. And then I get information on, again, the general stereotypical values and cultural profile of that country.
Saudis, yeah.
And of course, as with any kind of generalizations, we go in with these umbrella ideas, and then you have to just relate and check in with the person and your assumptions with the person you're face to face with.
Yeah.
So it deals with a lot of cultural and interpersonal nuances and dynamics.
And you find out that there is no typical Saudi, the same way that the Saudis are, by talking to you, are realizing, gee, there's no typical American.
I mean, I would say generally yes to your question. However, I'm assuming that you grew up in the United States.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did too. And so there's certain things that we know about living and operating in the United States. There's probably a lot of which we're not even aware of because it's all unconscious. That you just.
We're going to have to leave it at that. We've got so much more to talk about. You'll come back and we'll have some more good discussions because it's the whole idea of international relations is coming into play here, and that's going to be great food for discussion.
Yeah.
So I'm David Stevenson, Susan Shaner, Progressive Soup.
Thank you.
Good to have you on, Susan.
Good night. Bye.